While Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial is still going on, a new story has emerged, and it's not just about Diddy. It's also about legacy, inheritance, and power that was subtly passed down like a dark family business. His sons Justin and Christian Combs were allegedly raised in the spotlight of hip-hop royalty and were allegedly trained not to run a record label or start clothing brands, but to inherit the very structure that Diddy built behind closed doors. Now, with court testimony dropping bombshell after bombshell and federal agents raiding multi-million-dollar homes, questions are flying about what the sons knew and, more importantly, how long have they been involved. Because if what Cassie Ventura just hinted at is true, this goes much deeper than anyone could have imagined. In front of a packed courtroom, she unveiled a timeline that covered more than 10 years, revealing what life was like behind the velvet curtain of Diddy's empire, but beneath the personal chaos and tightly controlled image. Sean Combs would have to confess to trafficking and using force if Bill and Schott accepted a plea deal, but he made it clear today that this would not be the case. Diddy insisted that these interactions had always involved consenting adults and that he intended to take his chances that a jury would agree. Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs and I don't see it happening. Why? Because he thinks he's innocent, and he also thinks he needs to stand up, not just for himself, but also for his family and everyone else who the federal government has targeted for something even more well-thought-out infrastructure. Cassie described feeling watched not just by Diddy, but by the people around him. She claimed there were layers of handlers, assistants, enforcers, and at the center Diddy conducting it all. But then came the subtle shift and name drop, a moment that sent waves rippling out from the testimony. She recalled moments where Christian Combs was present not just as a bystander, but as someone being brought in to observe how things worked. That detail hit hard because it fed into the new theory swirling around the case that Diddy wasn't just living recklessly, he was building a legacy, training his heirs, giving his sons the blueprint. Cassie didn't lay it out explicitly, she didn't need to. The implication was enough, and it's the kind of implication that turns a courtroom drama into a multi-generational headline, and this was just the beginning. Dawn Richards' appearance in the courtroom wasn't expected, but the moment she stepped up, they came inside the courtroom, and again, this was after Diddy was already sitting down at the defense table. He looked back immediately, he smiled, he beamed up, he waved at all of her, or excuse me, at his two sons, and just kind of gave them kind of a little bit of, it's a good to see you type of feeling. That's what I was gathering from inside that courtroom. Now again, I want to remind our viewers that when we're inside federal court again, there's no cameras, which, Jesse, I'm sure you have already mentioned that part, but even for us journalists, with the exception of some who get a special permission of that, we just are relying on a notebook, a notepad, a pen, pencil, in order to kind of take notes to see what is all going on. I can't even take my Apple Watch inside that courtroom. Whenever there's a hearing, I have to turn that, and I have to turn my laptop, and of course I have to turn my phone in. So we're kind of just eye-itching everything that's going on now. When Christian and Justin came inside that courtroom, they were actually sitting just right across from me over on the left side of the gallery. So what I was seeing from both of his sons was a little bit of leg shaking. What I perceived to be a little prayer right before the hearing had actually started as well too. But again, I think their focus was maintaining a good face for their father, being supportive of their father, which you expect at this point because they've attended pretty much all of the hearings so far, with the exception of that emergency hearing that happened, I believe, back in October now. But then they kind of just stood, and they or not stood, it sat, and just kind of listened to what was all kind of happening. Again, that court hearing was pretty quick. It was about 30 minutes long. I think all of us were kind of surprised that the hearing did last that short amount of time as opposed to last hearing, which was about 2 hours, or the tone shifted. This wasn't just another celebrity trying to distance themselves from the scandal. This was someone who had lived in the orbit of Diddy's inner circle and saw what most never did. A former member of Danny Kane, Dawn, who was personally chosen by Diddy, was present when his media dominance was at its height and moved through the empire's daily operations as a silent witness. Her revelations validated what many had feared, that Cassie wasn't alone. Dawn described instances in which tension wasn't limited to the room. Rather, she detailed how Diddy allegedly operated with a constant need to watch over and manage his surroundings. Staff didn't move unless given orders, phones were collected, conversations were filtered, loyalty wasn't suggested, it was demanded. And within that world, Dawn revealed that she saw Diddy's sons, particularly Justin, frequently positioned nearby, not just as casual family members tagging along. They were present during critical moments, closed-door meetings, late-night gatherings, phone calls that ended with nervous assistants scrambling to follow up. It was all subtle but intentional. Dawn's testimony painted a picture of young men not just watching but learning, observing how things were managed, how people were handled, and how loyalty was tested. And here's the kicker: Dawn admitted that at the time, she didn't think much of it. But in hindsight, she said it felt like a training ground. That one phrase, training ground, is now ricocheting across every entertainment blog and courtroom summary. Because if true, it suggests something far more orchestrated. This wasn't a music mogul with a messy personal life. This was someone allegedly laying the groundwork for a legacy that stretched into the next generation. And what came out next added even more fuel. When the footage dropped, it spread like wildfire. Armored vehicles outside the Miami and Los Angeles mansions, agents in full tactical gear swarming the properties, helicopters overhead. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't just the overwhelming force used. It was who walked out of those gates. They weren't just visiting, they weren't at a friend's house, they were inside the very properties being raided by federal agents. And for many watching, that was the moment the rumor shifted into something far more chilling. These young men had been by their father's side on red carpets, in music videos, and in private for years. They weren't just boys who didn't know about his world. Lavish vacations, parties with A-listers, brand launches. But now they were on the front lines of a federal investigation when agents moved in. Christian was reportedly escorted out in Athletic, where visibly calm Justin followed, hands up, complying silently. No resistance, no confusion, just quiet submission to a moment that would haunt headlines for weeks. But what caught people off guard was what happened after. According to leaked intel from sources close to the investigation, both sons were questioned separately, and although they weren't detained or arrested, the sheer fact that they were on site during a federal raid across both coasts raised one obvious question: why were they so deeply embedded? If this was just a lifestyle, lavish parties, private jets, and designer clothes, why were they in the buildings that agents were storming? Some believe Diddy kept them close simply because they were family. Others, they're connecting dots, suggesting these appearances were never accidental, that they'd been placed there on purpose to learn, to watch, to manage. Because the truth is, if you're building an empire and want to keep it going, you don't train strangers, you train blood. And with that theory now fueling headlines, everyone started digging deeper into the timeline. When did this alleged training really start? And that's exactly what the next section explores: how early signs may have always been hiding in plain sight. This is where the narrative shifts from chaos to calculation. Because once you look back, not with blinders, but with context, there's a pattern that's hard to ignore. Diddy didn't just raise his sons in luxury. He raised them like protégés. He paraded them across stages, positioned them in front row business meetings, and handed them opportunities most people only dream of. But those opportunities came with exposure to everything. Let's start with Christian Combs' build as the next big thing in hip-hop. Before turning 20, he signed with Bad Boy Records, but the messaging, rather than the music, is what's really amazing. Christian's appearance was chosen to resemble his father's ostentatious outfits. Private aircraft, swagger-filled conversations, even his moniker, King Combs, is not a coincidence. It's a sign of succession planning. Justin Combs, on the other hand, wasn't pushed toward music. He was well-educated and a UCLA football player, but behind that polished image was a young man with deep access to the empire. He was often photographed at high-level business dinners with Diddy, and he even made an appearance in now-viral clips being introduced to powerful executives and foreign investors. Insiders, many of whom remained anonymous, have long whispered that Diddy didn't believe in hiring outsiders, but rather in legacy, and those closest to him stated that he wanted his empire, both the front-facing businesses and whatever might exist behind the scenes, to remain in the family. There are now rumors that Christian was frequently flown into closed-set gatherings with industry elites. Not strategy meetings, brand agreements, collaboration contracts, or music shoots, even hush conversations about how to handle bad press. And Justin, he was allegedly looped into decision-making moments involving PR, damage control, and finance ops. And he wasn't just sitting in the room, he was talking. Sources have even begun speculating that certain mentor figures were placed around the sons over the years, people who weren't stylists, coaches, or managers, but handlers, quiet figures with clean Public records and vague job titles always nearby, always watching. It's painting a picture that doesn't look accidental, it looks operational. So now people are going back, scrubbing old interviews, rewatching reality show cameos, looking for signs, any signs that Justin and Christian were being molded into more than celebrities. Because if Diddy was building a dynasty, he didn't need to say it out loud. He just needed to plant the seed. And what fans are discovering next, especially in public appearances and subtle red carpet quotes, is blowing this wide open. Once the theory caught fire, the public response wasn't subtle, it was explosive. Fans started digging, comment sections lit up with side-by-side photos comparing Diddy's poses to Christian's, analyzing their business moves, even decoding their interviews like hidden messages with captions like, "Smart in what way?" One video of Christian grinning and stating, "My dad taught me how to move smart in any room," is currently being replayed. Content producers on TikTok started compiling detailed histories of Justin and Christian's performances, highlighting any questionable overlaps and significant controversy surrounding them. Twitter threads analyzed their abrupt social media disappearances after the raids, and Reddit users found uncanny parallels between how both sons handled the media compared to their father, who was media-trained, emotionally distant, and evasive when asked personal questions. The question on everyone's mind was whether they were fully briefed or just caught in the crossfire. One former stylist even went viral for posting anonymously that Christian was always treated like a junior executive, never like a client, she claimed. He showed up